Uh-oh, we are on. I just saw, hi, Hen.
Hi, how are you? I feel like I haven't seen you in a year.
I know, but I keep hearing how very busy you are.
Yeah.
But I tell you, I didn't see you in person, but I did see you on some of those podcasts. I
Hi,
like the beard on you.
thank you. Where are you at right now?
Right now, I'm in Tel Aviv, Israel, and getting used to living in Israel. And for me, it feels like, I love America. I spent most of my life in America, but this feels more like home.
How long have you been in Israel?
Since just before October 7th, September 2023.
Any regrets?
No, no. It's interesting because I went back to the States for a visit a couple of times, and I felt that by going to visit, New York, I have some friends in Charleston, South Carolina, that I may feel longing for US. But no, it was a visit, and it was great seeing my friends. But coming back here, I still felt that this is my home. Yeah.
So we're talking today on the eve of Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I wanted to ask you a few questions about your story. You were just 6 years old when your family escaped the Nazis.
Yeah,
What
yes.
is the first memory you associate with that time?
So my first memory was shortly before the war broke out. I was a inquisitive child. I loved being around adults, more so than playing with other children, which I did too. But I felt that my real world was what the adults were and what the adults were talking about. They kept my mom, especially, reprimanding me. You can't keep on eavesdropping. It's not nice. You don't do that. So I was very little for my age, and I was sitting under the table. And when I think about the table now, it was like a huge round table with a number of extended family members, and they didn't even know I was sitting under the table. And I was eavesdropping, and I remember that was like the first inkling of what was to come. I remember my dad saying, "They will come for us. They will come for us." And I didn't know what he was talking about. And then he said, "But we will not wait for the knock on the door in the middle of the night." His sisters and brothers-in-law and the people that were, present, they kept insinuating that he was delusional and that he was paranoid, and they, the Nazis, now I know whom they meant when they said they are a civilized country, civilized people. They're not going to hurt innocent people, old and young and children. Come on, you can't be so crazy. And these talks went on for several times. This was before the war broke out. Finally, he actually convinced them. It was not an easy thing to leave your home, to leave your business, to leave everything. Just pick up and go. But they believed him. They were frightened at that point. And then the war broke out, which was September 1st, 1939. And we fled the town, all
So
14 of us. My mom, my dad, my sister, myself, and the extended family members. So we were all 14. We were traveling in an open wagon. We were 4 children and a cousin who was pregnant. We were, the 5 of us were on top of the bundles, but the 9 adults were walking. They were walking for months in all kinds of weather, all kinds of conditions. They were getting sick. I don't remember me getting sick, but I remember hearing coughing all the time. And the funny thing is, I remember my aunts wearing gloves that had holes where the fingers are, in these torn gloves. And I remember them, we were on the country roads because the Nazi Germany army were on the major roads. And they felt that we will not be caught if we are traveling in country roads, which were dirt roads. So when it rained, the wheels of the wagon sank into the dirt. And my aunts and uncle, my dad, and the women were literally pushing the wagon from the back to help the tired horse. We were very hungry. There was absolutely no food. And my relatives and my dad decided, okay, this is harvest time. We're going to go into the fields. We're going to steal whatever we can, maybe in the middle of the night. So I remember us eating carrots, which was wonderful, but we were also eating raw potatoes. And that wasn't wonderful. The way I feel about survivors, that every single survivor had 1 or 2 lucky moments. That's how people survive. From one happening, my 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 survival was that I was born to the parents that I had, because, and also my mom being a survivor thanks to the man she married. Because if it had been up to my mom, we would have stayed home, we would have been with the other relatives, and we would have been deported to Auschwitz, which was only about 50 some kilometers from my town. And later on, much later on, with the technology, and I learned that the whole Jewish population, only a few hundred, were deported to Auschwitz. So that was my lucky thing, mine and my sisters, and the extended family. They would not have survived. My parents were still in their early 30s, but 1 or 2 uncles were already in their 60s.
fate of everyone that stayed behind, other than your family that escaped, was death.
My mom, when I say my mom was lucky that she married my dad, because they were 5 siblings, and she was the only one who survived. 2 sisters, 2 brothers, and they were also in the early 30s. All the children were under the age of 10. None of them survived. Well, actually, later I found out that one cousin survived, and she survived under very difficult circumstances. A non-Jewish family took her in, and she was abused After the war, she went to UK to a Jewish family who were very good to her. She married the son of that family in London. And at the age of 30, she was exactly born when I was born. We were both named after one grandmother. At the age of 30, she committed suicide.
Why do you think she committed suicide?
She wasn't well. She had mental problems, tremendous. I don't know exactly any real details, but I heard that she was both physically and sexually abused. Look, right now there is a war between Ukraine and Russia. Ukrainians are flooding joining countries like Poland, Romania, Georgia. They take them in. But no one wanted to take us in. So the world did us wrong.
When we speak about the Holocaust survivors, and it's often associated with liberation of death camps, but your survival was different. It wasn't just one moment, it was years of.
It was years. We weren't even considered refugees. We were considered displaced persons. Displaced persons meaning that they don't have a home. And we didn't have a home for 10 years between 1939 and 1949. People also say that how lucky for the survivors. I'm not so sure about that because look at what the survivors had to live with. The memories of what was done to them personally, the tortures, the abuse, and what was done to their families. Even if a survivor survived Auschwitz, that's because maybe that person was young and looking healthier than others, and they thought that they would see their families. And you know, the more experienced ones who had been in Auschwitz longer, they would say, that's where your parents are, through the chimney. So, I don't know. Everyone wants to survive. That's true. But survival of the survivors was one of the most difficult things, and I don't know how many people realize that.
And the journey itself, those 10 years, were there times that you were hungry, that you were cold, that you were starving? I mean, tell
Oh
us about
yeah,
that experience.
when we were in Central Asia, I remember that I was so hungry that that's all I was thinking about all day long. And, we were going to school, we were able to go to school, but I could not concentrate on math or literature or something. All I was thinking of is bread, some food. And then the educators, I don't call them teachers because they were not teachers, they were educated men and women. And they felt that we should take everything in a dignified way. Do not discuss being hungry. Do not discuss having lice crawl all over you. Uh, and so when we had a piece of bread divided for, let's say, 30, 20 pieces, and we were looking who was getting a bigger piece. But you never were supposed to mention it. You had to live with dignity. I feel that if the Polish people uh, just kept their mouths shut, there would have been many more people in hiding and surviving in hiding. I know of people, instances where they were given away by a nanny that took care of the baby, and she brought them to the hiding place. Of course, I feel anger. I, you know, 3 million Jews lived in Poland. My guess is that only 10% survived, we among them. But if the Polish people didn't do anything and didn't say anything, maybe 1.5 million of Polish Jews would have survived. And you know, my dad, the family was saying, you're delusional, delusional. And my dad said, listen, we can't fight them, meaning, Nazis. We can't hide because there would be people who would denounce us. So the only thing we can do is run. He was right. He was right. History proves him right. The Germans offered them half a kilo of sugar for one Jew and maybe 3 kilos for a whole family of Jews. Okay, so some liked their idea. But there were some who were giving them away for nothing, no sugar or anything. And what can you call this but pure anti-Semitism? The hatred of the Jews that even to this day, and this day is more, um, it's more like around the world because of the internet, the social media, all that. It's more intensified, anti-Semitism. Jewish people were always persecuted. My mom had a best friend who immigrated to Palestine in 1920s, and she sent my mom a beautiful, like a shell, and my mom carried it throughout the war.
Most Jews back then, before the creation of Israel, supported an existence of a Jewish state, wanted it to happen.
Oh, absolutely. 1947, I remember exactly where I was. My sister and I were living in an orphanage in Antwerp, Brussels, and it was the whole philosophy of that orphanage was very much Zionistic. We were singing the songs that Israeli people were singing and all those festivals and everything. And I still remember when the United Nations, I think they were in some place in Long Island, sure, proclaimed that there will be a free Jewish state. I remember how happy we were. I think it all started with next year in Jerusalem, with the prayers. So the more religious you were, the more you were longing for next year in Jerusalem.
Do you think that if Israel existed before the war, things would have been different?
I have no doubt that there would not have been a Holocaust if Israel existed. When you think of Israel, what it is today, of course, in those days, it wouldn't be exactly like what it is today. We have technology, we have all the science and everything, but it would definitely not result in a Holocaust. You know, you know better than me. We had a few million Jewish people in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Syria, in Iran. So what would have happened?
Yeah, my grandparents in Tunisia, they were in a forced labor camp of the French Vichy regime, and they
Oh,
were
yeah,
supposed to be sent to Europe to death camps. And because the war was over, they were liberated.
look at that. Even though they were losing the war for more than a year, they were losing the war. Still, there was a plan to deport the Tunisian Jews.
Yeah. Um,
So speaking of, anti-Semitism,
and what do you think about anti-Semitism today as a Holocaust survivor? How do you feel seeing Holocaust
I'll,
denial and
I'll
distortion?
tell you honestly, I get a little sad and a little depressed because I see no end to this, unfortunately.
Mm.
When October 7th happened, I was in bed shape. I couldn't believe it. The thing, well, these are monsters. Some people say, "Oh, they are they are animals." No, they're not animals. Animals don't kill that way.
Lucy, a few years ago, I remember Whoopi Goldberg said something on The View.
Yeah.
Because the Holocaust isn't about race.
No.
No, it's
Well,
not about
maybe
race.
ethnicity.
Well, they
No,
consider
it's
Jews
about
a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about
Well,
race.
what is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man. That's what it's about.
But it's about white supremacy. It's
Well,
about
but
going
it's not-
after
it's
Jews
not about
and
ideal race.
gypsies
It's,
and
but these are two
Romans.
white groups of people.
How dare she say it was white people fighting white people? We in that part of Europe tend to be white, but we were not fighting anyone. We were being killed and slaughtered because of our race. And here this woman acts like she's, a real historian, real expert on
Did she
things.
ever reply to your request to speak to her?
No, just as well. And also, I said on one of those cable conversations, we are not all white. We are brown and we are uh, black, and we are Jews from Ethiopia and Yemen, and we originally 3,000 years ago looked like that. The only reason why Northern European Jews look white is because, let's face it, let's be honest, we integrated with them even if we kept our faith. My mother's family were all blue-eyed and blonde-haired.
And it didn't help them.
Did not help them, no. Sometimes when a young child looked, blue eyes and blonde, there was perhaps a Gentile family who was willing to keep that child, but for a little boy, it was a disaster because Jewish boys were circumcised. And Germans knew how to use that, made them pull down their pants.
If you could speak to 6-year-old Lucy today, what would you tell her?
That's a good question. Of course, in retrospect, I would tell her, don't worry, because your daddy is going to save you. Yeah. I remember the day when I was a very religious child. My parents were Orthodox. And I honestly believe that between my parents and God, nothing bad will happen to me. And when I experienced the bombing and I saw dead people and people all in blood and dirt, and God, why don't you do something? And I was still 6-year-old. And I believe that that had changed me from being a child to being no longer a 6-year-old.